Good morning and welcome to week 4 of Pacific Northwest Sports football summary. So we got a lot, but overall, I think as we go through these games, we're going to learn something that, Mel Kiper went on a rant last week about how we should ban too high safeties and people were making fun of it because it's never going to happen. But the other part that I think was really important about that he did prove is that people are learning at the NFL level to run the ball. And the NFL likes to mimic college, and the college likes to mimic the NFL. And one thing that seems to be clearly evident is that running the ball is a key to success. Now, every coach you ever ask will go, yeah, duh, running leads to wins. But running has gone up drastically over the past couple of seasons because, hey, you want to prevent everything deep, which is great, but then you expose yourself to the box, which is where those running backs make a living. So we're going to go through these games here, and I really can't wait to give you guys some info. It's pretty impressive, and I think you're going to see an overall dominating factor that if you run the ball, you can win. Now, there's some good passing games in here as well, but overall, you run the ball, you usually can get a dub. Let's start with the UW Huskies. They played Northwestern and won 24-5. Now, UW was able to rebound from last week's tough loss against Wazoo in the Apple Cup, and they got their first conference win as a member of the Big Ten, which is extremely impressive. Player of the game, Jonah Coleman. It seems like when he's going, this team tends to go with him as well. 15 carries, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Also had 3 catches for 36 yards. UW plays Rutgers next week. A great chance to start your season at 4-1. Now we go over to Wazoo. Wazoo played San Jose State and won 54-52. Now, this game was absolutely nuts. Most people were probably asleep on a Friday night. It was not, because I was watching the game. Now, it's crazy, right? So Wazoo goes into halftime. They're feeling kind of good, but everyone was like, hey, this is a really sloppy game. We're coming off a high beating UW in the Apple Cup, and we know this game could end badly for us. San Jose State proceeds to put up 21 unanswered points in the third quarter, and now Wazoo's left. They're going into the fourth quarter down by 10. So Wazoo goes, they end up taking the lead. San Jose State drives down the field. They score with about, I think it was 42 seconds, something around that. They take the lead. Wazoo drives down the field, kicks a field goal, and ties it up. And right there, let's just stop. I saw a tweet on X a while back, and it made me laugh because it was like, there's nothing worse than watching your favorite team, their entire game, potentially their season, come down to a kicker who's 20 years old kicking a game-winning field goal. Like, there is no worse feeling. Yet, it happened to Wazoo. So I'm watching Dean Janikowski. Okay, he's going to kick a field goal to send it to overtime. He kicks it, and I'm like, oh boy, right down the middle. Good. Almost had a heart attack, but it felt great. Okay. Then San Jose State gets the ball first in overtime. They throw a pick. I'm thinking, great, Cougs, run the ball a couple times, maybe a couple passes with Mateer. You'll end up being just fine. No. Mateer goes back, right side hash mark, throws an out route about 30 yards downfield on a left out. Gets picked off. Just the amount of arm strength you have to even make that throw is ridiculous. But got picked. So now Wazoo's on offense, right? Wazoo goes. They score. Okay, they get a touchdown. Then they go for 2, and they don't get it. But it goes to review, right? Wazoo ends up running. Turns out Mateer did get in. His left foot kicked the pylon while still in bounds. And because of that, you get goal line extended, which then allows the ball to then be a part of that, and they get a score. So now it's 54 points for the Cougs, right? Well, San Jose State goes down the field in overtime. They don't really have to go down for 25 yards, but they score. So now it all comes down to a 2-point conversion. Well, San Jose State drops back, and what happens? Their quarterback gets strip sacked. Wazoo recovers. They escape with a 54-52 win. Now, John Mateer is the player of the game, right? 390 yards, 4 touchdowns, 111 yards rushing, and another touchdown. Wazoo plays Boise State next week. Now, looking ahead to that game, there's a world in which Wazoo can win out. And if Wazoo can somehow beat Boise State next week, this will go a long way towards potentially getting a college football playoff bid. Now, it's a strange world. They aren't in a conference, although the Pac-12 is being rebuilt. we want to release an episode on that. But at this time, it's far from a guarantee. And so you have to be somewhat worried that things like this may end up affecting the Cougs long term in terms of, if they go undefeated, do they have a right to get, maybe even that 12 seed? So it's going to be an interesting year, but you need to win your games 1 week at a time. So Wazoo plays Boise State next week. Over to Eastern Washington, they played Nevada and lost 16-49. If you're a Big Sky team, if you're an FCS team and you play an FBS team, wins don't come easy, and it's what's expected. So frankly, Nevada won a game they should have won. Eastern Washington plays Montana next week. Over to Central Washington, you had them play West Texas A&M, and they won 45-3. And the Wildcats start their conference play with a win. From their All-American safety Tanner Volk taking a pick back for a touchdown, to having two different running backs go over 100 yards. It was a pretty good day for the Cats. Expect them to keep rattling off the wins as they get deeper and deeper and deeper into Frontier Conference play. Central plays Western New Mexico next week. Then we had your PLU Lutes play California Lutheran University. They won 27-17. Now, you win football games by running the ball, and the Lutes did that to the tune of 278 yards. PLU has proven they can win with a strong running game and really good defense, and it might just help quarterback Darius Chafin to be able to run the ball just like that. Chafin actually was our player of the game. He himself ran for 100 yards in 12 carries and a touchdown. So, pretty good game by the kid. PLU has a bye next week. Your Puget Sound Loggers played the University of La Verne and won 49-14. Now, Puget Sound was just better on the field. There's really not much to say. All around, great team win, but I mean, it was just they were better and overmatched them. Player of the game, Harry Hernandez, who had 36 touches for 206 yards and 2 tutties, played absolutely out of his mind. Then you have your Whitworth Pirates playing against Chapman. Now, the offense wasn't great, but the Pirates actually lead the nation in turnover margin. So good things come when that happens, right? They had a 2-0 margin, so they had 0 turnovers and forced 2, and they blocked a punt. The Pirates are somewhat streak right now, and after all, they were outgained in this game, 441 yards, 285. But Whitworth played the best in the second and third quarters, putting up 21 and 14 points respectively. Player of the game, Ryan Blair, who went 21 of 29 for 207 yards and 5 touchdowns. Whitworth has a bye next week. Then over to Oregon, we have your Oregon State Beavers, who played Purdue and won 38-21. They had 341 yards on the ground, and it propelled them to win. At one point, it seemed as if the Giovanni McCoy was going to unlock a different aspect of this Beaver team, but at this time, he seems more like a game manager. Player of the game, Jam Griffin, 22 carries for 146 yards and 1 touchdown. The Beavs have a bye next week. Over to your Portland State Vikings. They played Boise State and lost 14-56. Now, Ashton Jeanty had 130 yards rushing on 11 carries, but he had no touchdowns. Does this hurt his Heisman chances? You be the judge and tell me that one. Overall, Boise State still has a chance to go to the college football playoff as well. Their biggest test is next week when they play Wazoo. Should be an amazing game. Portland State plays Chattanooga next week. Your Western Oregon Wolves played Sul Ross State University and won 39-17. Now, the Wolves scored 29 unanswered points as they cruised to a win to open up the Lone Star Conference play. They opened the season with 264 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, and it might propel them towards the top of the Lone Star Conference. 6 different players had 25 yards rushing. The player of the game, weirdly enough, not one person stood out. And honestly, it might be a good thing for the Wolves, as the defense won't be able to key in on one guy to stop. Western Oregon will play Texas A&M next week. Your George Fox Bruins played the Claremont Mudscripts and lost 17-27. Sometimes you start off a little slow and it ends up costing you. And this week, it cost George Fox. They opened the game rather lethargic, and it culminated in them being down 21 points at halftime. Now, George Fox came out firing in the second half with a fire that really no one had seen so far, but CMS would ice the game, going on a 10-minute drive that included 3 third-down conversions and 1 fourth-down conversion. George Fox did end up forcing a fumble at the 1-yard line, but they would end up being strip sacked just 3 plays later. The long drive turned out to be the final blow. George Fox is bye next week. Your Lewis and Clark Pioneers played Montana Western and lost 39-56. Now, Montana Western decided to light up the scoreboard, and Lewis and Clark decided to join in just on the losing end. At one point, it was 28-25 Montana Western, but they would go on back-to-back scoring drives, forcing this game to get blown wide open. The player of the game, Jake Humphrey, 11 rushes, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Lewis and Clark has a bye next week. Montana Western plays Southern Oregon next week. Linfield Wildcats played Redlands and won 45-0. Linfield pitched a shutout, really nothing new, and the game was never in doubt, not even for a second. Field outgained Redlands 463 yards to 126 for the game. By the way, Redlands didn't get over 100 total yards of offense until late in the fourth quarter. Player of the game, Blake Eaton, who went 25 of 33 for 249 yards and 2 touchdowns. Linfield is on a bye next week. Your Pacific Boxers played Pomona Pitzer, and they won 45-14. Pacific forced 2 turnovers in the first half, and then in the second half forced 5 straight punts. Player of the game, Braden Titus, who went 25 of 34 for 370 yards and 4 tutties. Pacific has a bye next week. Your Eastern Oregon Mountaineers played Montana Tech and came out on the losing side, 22-45. Where were you the last time Montana Tech started 3-0? It was 2017, and it was only the third time they've been 3-0 since 1990. The Orediggers put up 440 yards of offense on 59 snaps, averaging 7.5 yards per play. Overall, this is a dominating win and one that will surely be remembered for Montana Tech. Eastern Oregon plays Rocky Mountain next week, and Montana Tech has a huge game against the College of Idaho next week. Your Southern Oregon Raiders played the College of Idaho and came out on top 45-27. Now, talk about an upset. No one thought this was going to happen. Heck, my job is to look into these games and see what may take place, and I didn't even see this one coming. Now, this didn't count towards Frontier Conference play, as is tradition at the beginning of the year, but it will surely count for both teams when they rematch in Caldwell in November. Player of the game, Gunnar Yates, who had 31 rushes, 293 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Southern Oregon will play Montana Western next week. College of Idaho will play Montana Tech next week. Over to Idaho, where your Idaho Vandals played Abilene Christian and won 27-24. It's a good win for Idaho, but when you're up 27-3 and then you let up 21 unanswered points, and then you're able to, the only way you're able to win is by forcing a fumble with under 1 minute left. It's going to have you breathing a little hard, a little heavy, you're a little nervous. But that's what Idaho did. But a win against a ranked opponent is all that matters when it comes for FCS seeding time. Player of the game, wide receiver, Jordan Dwyer. 5 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. Idaho will play UC Davis next week. Your Idaho State Bengals played Southern Utah, and they got a win 38-28. Now, despite a late comeback attempt, Southern Utah was dominated by Idaho State. Speaking of history, Pocatello was kind of a nightmare for the Thunderbirds, as they are now 3-10 there and 1-1 in homecoming games there. Player of the game, Eason Brooks, 8 attempts, 139 yards, and a touchdown. Idaho State plays Montana State next week, and Southern Utah plays Austin, PA next week. Over to Montana, your Montana Grizzlies played Western Carolina and won 46-35. Now, the Grizz were going against the number 1 offense last year. They averaged over 500 yards a game, and they were down to a 17-0 deficit in the first quarter. And as we know, the Grizz are not built to have a boat race on offense, but with a strong running game, they're able to get back in the game and overcome some adversity to get the win. Player of the game, Eli Gilman, 14 attempts, 177 yards, and 1 touchdown. 2 different rushes on over for 50 yards. Now, Eli Gilman, at this point, if he keeps playing the way he is, has a legitimate chance to go for the Walter Payton Award. Now, he is so freaking good. I think he's really, really slept on. So we need to watch this, because I think Eli Gilman might end up being the player of the year in the Big Sky. Montana plays Eastern Washington University next week. That's sure to be a really good game. The University of Montana Bobcats played Mercyhurst 52-13. Not much to say. Pure domination. Cats are on bye next week. I literally have nothing left to say. It's just, it is what it is. They got a nice, good win. Same thing here. Carroll Fighting Saints, they beat Simpson 52-0. Now, to Simpson's defense, it's their 3rd ever football game played at the NAIA level, and they lost to Carroll, who cruised to just a simple win. Player of the game, Jack Parka, 14 of 18, 225 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Carroll plays Arizona Christian next week. MSU Northern Lights played Arizona Christian University. They lost 10-31. It's a tough loss, but we hope the Lights are able to bounce back MSU has a bye next week. Over to our one team that we get to cover in Wyoming. They played the University of North Texas and lost 17-44. Now, Wyoming continues to lose, and the offense really isn't providing much excitement to make you think they can win any game at this point. Right now, the best hope is that Wyoming is able to just come out swinging in some sort of trap game that someone thinks is an easy win and take them by surprise. This Wyoming team is frankly the worst they've looked in quite some time. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's quarterback play, because it surely hasn't been even halfway decent. But Craig Bohl had this team on a solid trajectory, and right now it's not what you would expect. It's definitely frustrating to watch, but Wyoming plays Air Force next week. Maybe if they can shut down the Service Academy's triple option and some of the pistol they do, maybe Wyoming can sneak to a win. But it's going to be an uphill battle. And we're getting near the end here because we got Utah, our last state. BYU Cougars played Kansas State and won 38-9. Now, this is a ranked game against a very good Kansas State squad. I believe it was also the second ever win in Provo over a top 15 team that has been held scoreless. Very unique stat. When I say scoreless, they didn't score an offensive or defensive touchdown. They settled for 3 field goals, equaling the 9 Kansas State had. Now, the Cougs proved they're a legitimate 4-0 program, and I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about them being ranked around 25, 24. Now, the Cougs scored a touchdown on offense, defense, and special teams. And when all three of those factors in the game are working with each other, you become a buzzsaw and teams beg to not play you. And right now, BYU is certainly putting up an argument to be someone that no one wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. A little bit of a Grinch reference there. Anyway, right now, I think the play of the year, and the player of the game goes to Parker Kingston. Now, he nearly muffed a punt. He picked it up bouncing at about the 10, made some moves, went all the way back to his own goal line, and then took it up the left side, picking up blocks along the way. And all of a sudden, he scores a touchdown that really, I think, goes down as about like a 90-ish or maybe like an 85-yard return punt from where he muffed it. But it was, by all accounts, 99 yards as he touched his own goal line and then ran all the way back. It's quite impressive and really fun. BYU plays Baylor next week. For those of you who don't know, Baylor lost in dramatic fashion to Colorado. So that's sure to be an emotional game for both teams. BYU coming off the high, Baylor coming off of we almost got. Your Utah Utes played Oklahoma State, and they won 22-19. Now the Big 12 debut, check. Top 25 win, check. Cam Rising playing, right? No check. Will he be ready next week? We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Now, Utah dominated the time possession, having the ball 42 minutes of the 60-minute game. Player of the game, Micah Bernard, 25 attempts, 183 yards. No, he didn't score, but what he did was allow Utah to hold on to the ball and keep Oklahoma State, who has a really good running back in Ollie Gordon, off the field. They were never able to get anything going. Props to the Utah defense for being able to dominate, and props to the Utah offense for just milking the clock. Over to Utah State. They played Temple and lost 29-45. I mean, come on. Temple? It's just, I don't know what to say. It's just sad. You really don't expect this out of Utah State. They aren't an amazing team, but you do expect them to get the wins that they should have. But this is why you can't take anything for granted, and it's any given Saturday in college football. Frankly, it makes me nervous for the whole season. It's going to be a long season for Utah State. Them, I think, like Wyoming, are just hoping they can get some games. Quarterback play plays a huge part into this. If you don't got a quarterback who's competent, you're going to be in trouble. Utah State is bye next week. Hopefully they can collect and get ready for the rest of the year. Utah Tech Trailblazers played UC Davis and lost 17-45. 4 turnovers doomed you, and that is how you lose a game, by having 4 turnovers and not forcing one on the other side of things. Utah Tech plays Abilene Christian next week. State played Northwestern State and got a win 39-0. Now, Weber State dominated the whole game, and it was their first shutout since 2021 when they shut out Utah Tech 61-0, I believe. So quite impressive. Player of the game, Richie Munoz, 19 of 31 for 327 yards and 3 touchdowns. Weber plays McNeese next week. As always, here's who we have going next week. Sure to be a really, really good game. UW against Rutgers, Wazoo against Boise State, Eastern Washington versus Montana, Central Washington versus Western New Mexico. Oregon plays UCLA, Portland State plays Chattanooga, Western Oregon Wolves play West Texas A&M. Willamette plays Simpson, Eastern Oregon plays Rocky Mountain, Southern Oregon plays Montana Western, Idaho plays UC Davis, Idaho State plays Montana State, College of Idaho plays Montana Tech, Carroll Fighting Saints plays Arizona Christian University, Wyoming plays Air Force, BYU plays Baylor, Utah plays Arizona, Utah Tech plays Abilene Christian, Weber State plays McNeese, and Southern Utah plays Austin, PA. It is going to be quite the season, and I cannot wait. As always, my name's Jay. This is Pacific Northwest Sports, and I cannot wait for next week. Have a great one, guys.